Okay, good afternoon.
Sorry, go ahead.
Welcome to the Corporate Parenting Board. So my name's Megan Rochester and I'm the Democratic Services Support Officer for this committee. So can we please take the next item on the agenda, which is to elect a chair for the committee. Can I ask if we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Bridget Bolwell for the position of chair. Very experienced in SEND safeguarding and generally school work and interactions with young people. I think she's well placed to chair this committee.
And do I have a seconder? Are there any other nominations? Therefore, can I please take that to a vote as Councillor Bridget Bolwell as chair of the committee? All those in support?
Doesn't require a vote.
Perfect. Okay, therefore, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Bridget Bolwell. Would you like to take that?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Councillor Bridget Bolwell. I'm Dorset Councillor for Bridport Ward and Town Councillor for Bottomhampton and Woolwich. Thank you for the confidence that you've placed in me. I hope that I can continue the excellent work carried out by Kate Weller. We now need to nominate a vice chair, and I'd like to nominate Duncan Soweryhouse. Can I have a seconder, please? Matt Bell. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? So Duncan Soweryhouse is our new vice chair. And I look forward to working with you, Duncan. Can I just a reminder, any use of microphones, please speak directly into the microphone if you're online, so that you can clearly be heard and seen. Please state your name. If you have comments after the reports, please state your name and your role before you speak. Please could you make sure that you've turned off your mobile phones or put them on silent. This meeting is being live streamed, so we must not discuss individual cases as this would need to be done within exempt business. Item 2, do we have any apologies?
We've received no apologies for absence from members.
Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. No declarations of interest. Item 4, minutes. For those of you at the last meeting, is this a true record of the meeting?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will sign the minutes as a true record in due course. Thank you. Item 5, public participation. There has been no public participation. So following individual reports, if my colleagues have any comments, please put up your hand. Duncan will note the order of persons with raised hands. I will now ask Teresa Levy, Executive Director for People and Children, to set the scene for the meeting. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Chair, and can I welcome you to your new role and Vice Chair too. You're very welcome, and it's good to be relaunching the Corporate Parenting Board at this time. My apologies, I can only not be with you because I'm at a required regional DCS event. Otherwise, I'd absolutely be with you in the room. But it is a great time, and you have a very busy agenda today to look at the incredible work that's already going on across the partnership to make sure that our very precious and important children in our care and our care leavers have the very best lives that they can in Dorset and into the future. These are our citizens with great capacity who we want to see do well. So you have reports in front of you today for fostering, for adoption, for care leavers, for youth voice, and the overall data set and corporate parenting strategy. So what we're really clear about is that you have got a lot of documents today. We appreciate that. It's important, though, to get all of that scene setting in the right place as we move forward together, cross-party, cross-council, cross-partnership. Our children need all of us being our very best selves to bring all of our capacity to their lives. And I'm incredibly grateful by the colleagues who are in the room and in this partnership to make sure that we do that together, collegiately challenging, supporting each other as we do that. And I would just really want to launch this new version of the Corporate Parenting Board into that space. So thank you, Chair. My staff will be taking you through all of the reports. I'm sure there'll be some detailed questions. We'll answer them where we can. Where we can't, as usual, we would always be providing a written response afterwards to any questions you have. So absolutely, we just want to reiterate what has been said. This is live streamed. It is very tempting for any of us to get into the detail of our children because we know them very well. So a reminder to officers to be mindful about that in terms of a public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Item 8. Corporate parenting data set. We are now receiving a report from Louise Drury, Head of Service Children in Care.
I think Paul's taking this.
Hello everyone, my name is Paul Dempsey. I'm Corporate Director for Care and Protection. You've had the papers, so I assume you've had a look at the data set. The data set is generally, after welcoming introductions and scene setting, the way we start each of our corporate parenting board meetings, even the informal ones. It's an opportunity for members around the table to see how we're performing, our activity, and what's happening to our children and young people. There's a lot of information there. I'm just going to read out some of the summary highlights. The infographics section at the top of the data set is something we introduced during the last year to try and give members easy access to the key figures without having to trawl through all the minutiae. So by all means, if you've looked at all the different bits of data underneath the infographics, and you've got questions, we can go into that, but I'm just going to highlight some of the summary information. So there are 41 indicators that have improved this month compared to the last corporate parenting board meeting, and 18 that have got worse. So that's more positive than negative. We go up and down some of the indicators, but direction of travel is largely good. 69% of our children in care are in foster placements. That's better than the national average and good plus statistical neighbours. That's an important indicator because we want children in care to grow up in a family-based environment. So we've got more to do on that. We would like that to push that up significantly further. So really important that we recruit a sufficient number of local foster carers. The total number of children in care has reduced from 449 to 442. So we're doing that by supporting families in the community to look after their children with the support of practitioners, multi-agency practitioners around the county. Important part of our strategy that too many children do live more than 20 miles away. So that's about provision of local placements. However, the number of children in care that live outside Dorset has been reducing. So there are two locality measures there. One about out of county and the other one about 20 miles. And you could live within 20 miles and still live out of county if your home was just on the border and the placement was just over the border the other side. So that's why we use two of those measures. And you could be in county but still 20 miles or more from your family home where you grew up. So that's what that's about. 71% of children in care have secured long-term stability. So that measures the percentage of children who've been in care for 2.5 years who have been in the same stable placement for the last 2 years. So really important that children have stability and continuity, achieving that for 71% this month. the national average and good plus statistical neighbours is at 69%. So we always want to do better, but we're performing a bit better than those comparator groups. Short-term stability is good too. 8% had 3 or more placements in the last 12 months. Obviously, we want children coming into care not to have too many placements, and that's the kind of national measure. So the national average is at 10% on that one. This measure we need to do better on. 63% of our children in care had a strength and difficulties questionnaire. That's a questionnaire that tries to measure emotional well-being of our children in care. 63% we know is not good enough. It has improved since the last corporate parenting board meeting, but we are striving to improve that significantly. Completion of initial health assessments in time, and in time means within 20 days of a child coming into care. That has improved from 75% to 86% from this board to since the last board. That goes up and down. We have had some challenges with all our health indicators throughout this year. We have it's gone up and down, but it has improved to the end of April, and we shall keep working with our health partners to make sure that we keep that up. Average school attendance is at 87%, and 100% of our children in care have a termly personal education plan. So that's very good. 2 care leavers are in bed and breakfast. That's 2 more than we would want. That has come down. We did several months ago have 5, so we are continually striving to provide suitable accommodation for our children, our care leavers.
Sorry, could I just, it says 3 on the report.
Does it? It does. Apologies, I've written the wrong number. It's 3.
It is 3.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah. It is 2 now,
Sorry
today,
to
so that's my mistake.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It was 3
Now
when we
it's
took the date
Okay,
for this report.
lovely, thank you.
Thank you. 96% of our care leavers are in suitable accommodation. 56% of our care leavers are in education, employment or training, and we need to do better there. It does mean 44% aren't in education, employment and training, and that is a key priority for us moving forward this year. 95% of care leavers have an up-to-date pathway plan. So this is the plan that our practitioners develop in partnership with the young person leaving care, that sets out their road towards independence and their education, employment and training options and their accommodation options. And we are in touch with 97% of our care leavers. So I think nearly all of that is in the infographics at the top, and I've just sort of let that on there really. So happy to answer if there's any questions.
Thank you. So are there, sorry. Yes, are there any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of this reads across the rest of the reports, but one I'm particularly picking up is the figures for whether you're not in education, employment or training. So again, I'm using statistics not just from the data set, but from the other papers, and it's looking like the NEET numbers from 16 to 17 are only 23%, and then you go to 17 to 8. No, I'll turn it around. I'll talk about those that are in education, employment or training. So 23% of the 16 to 17s, 65. I'm doing this all wrong. 77% of the 16 to 17s, 65% of the 17 to 18s, 56% of the 19 to 21s, but the 18 to 25 bracket overall, the NEET numbers there are 46%. So what I'm extrapolating from those numbers is that whilst the numbers start off relatively good, they decrease really rapidly and fall really quite exponentially from 21 onwards. Am I reading those numbers right? And if so, that doesn't appear to be captured in the data set. And is that because the data set primarily goes up to 21 as opposed to 25?
Well, Thank you for the question. Firstly, you've picked up on the point that there are several different measures to measure engagement with education, employment and training for our care leavers. They're broken down into different age cohorts. So that the age cohort that I've given you and that we regularly include in the infographics is for care leavers aged 19 to 21. The reason that we choose that one particularly for here is because that's the figure that we have to submit to the Department for Education at the end of the year in our submission for children in care. You are right that the outcomes decrease through the age group. We don't think that, but we do know that we need to do more for our care leavers. The national average position for care leavers aged 19 to 21 last year was 56%. We're not happy to be average. We want to be good and better, and we want more of our care leavers to be in education, employment and training. We have a strategy that's got a number of kind of elements to it. We are expanding council provision of apprenticeships. We've just started a new DFE funded mentoring scheme to support young people, with their relationships, but also with access to employment, and that's run in partnership with the BCS sector. Virtual School is doing lots of work with younger people. Colleagues might want to add to that. So yeah, there are different cohorts we measure, so different measurements. We give the 19 to 21 in this infographic summary. Don't know if colleagues want to add to the strategic actions with planning.
Thank you. Any more questions?
If I could ask,
Sorry, I think they're going to come in and just follow up on the question.
Thank you. I'm Jo Smart Richards, Service Manager for Virtual School. Just to add to Paul's commentary, that the Virtual School works with children and young people up to the age of 18, and through that monitoring, we really focus on those children who are not in education, employment and training through a fortnightly meeting. That actually colleagues from the care leaver team also are part of that panel that actually then come in and share that practice and so that awareness and that knowledge of our young people. So there's that handover of young people from us to the care leaver team as well.
Mandy Jarvis from the Youth Voice team. We've just been tasked with exploring why our young people are struggling to get into education and employment and training, and what barriers they face that perhaps we're not picking up with. And that report's just gone to the project group that's looking at that. And there's definitely a link from what we found with health. Actually, our young people are saying to us they don't like to be described as neat, because actually they are not neat, and they are processing trauma or struggling with mental health. I think there's something to explore there with it, but that's what we've heard in the last month or so.
Really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Matthew Chislett. I'm the service manager for the Living Care Service. We'll just give a little bit more detail around what we're doing to support our young people into education, employment and training. Our head of services currently sharing weekly data with our director and senior managers. We're also a standard practice within our service, having our team managers working with our PAs and just having those discussions around, you know, where is a young person currently, what are the barriers, what can we do to support, and really linking in with our EAT colleagues to come into our space, making use of, for example, the Curdleton Hub, to have those discussions, to really work with the young people to get them ready. Just taking on from Mandy as well, we're also looking at a safeguarding family together model that will include our care leaver, so my service, where we're looking to link with adults with mental health services to really support our young people with their self-esteem, with their confidence, with all of those additional factors that may be inhibiting them from finding that education, employment or training. There's a lot going on in our space. We've also had, for example, under our apprenticeships, we've got currently 8 at the moment with an ambition to extend that up to 17, which will have a huge impact on the numbers of our young people accessing employment. We're also reaching out to other local authorities. So, for example, my head of service is linking with Cornwall to see how they've achieved their performance and see if there's anything that there's learning there for us to embed in our service, really, to bring us along. There's just so much going on at the moment, and it is something that we see slight improvements, and more recently, more improvement. I'm hoping in coming boards you'll see that taking traction in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Duncan? Okay, Andy Todd.
Andrew Todd, Colin Hill, I answer to both, and Westminster East. Going back to Mandy's point, if I may, I'm interested, is there a correlation between children with EHCP and people in need that you're seeing?
The work we've done, I wouldn't know. I don't want to tell you. I don't know. We put a call out to talk to our young people, and it's very much based on who comes back to us to speak to us about it. Don't know is the answer. Sorry, I would give that a kiss.
Thank you. Done. Paul?
Thank you. Yeah, there is a correlation. There is also a correlation. We have a significant cohort of care leavers who are not in education and training, who are said to be ill, and some who are parents or pregnant. So that's a particular group that is more challenging, and not ruling those people out, but there's extra things we have to do for that group of young people, as well as people with EHCP plans. I would say, and Mandy touched on it, that across the country, mental health and emotional wellbeing is seen basically as the largest barrier to education, employment and training engagement for care leavers. We are very much looking to improve support for care leavers in terms of their mental health and emotional wellbeing, and we are just at sort of developing proposals to develop a bit more of a multi-agency care leaver service that involves adult mental health practitioners. So those are developments we're going to make.
Thank you. Teresa, sorry, did you want to say something?
Thanks, Chair. Really, just to reinforce that point, is we do know that our children in care, and therefore our care leavers, tend to have a higher representation in the education, health and care plan setting. But what we're seeing in our own care leavers and in the care leavers nationally is this real steep rise in those with significant mental health issues, and so I think that is the area that we're absolutely investing in. So that's the right thing to be doing. It does mean that we'll support our young people getting into work just as soon as they possibly can, and even those that are parenting, we know absolutely they may well want to work as well, so we're looking to think about all the support systems that we need around them.
Thank you. Duncan?
Thank you. So just moving on from care leavers to the 3% of children that are placed for adoption. How are we doing with that? How long do Dorset children wait for adoption? And how does that compare with sibling groups? And then how do both of those compare nationally?
Okay, so the 3% I think is representing the amount that are currently placed for adoption. There's a number of indicators around adoption performance. Another indicator is the percentage of care leavers each year who leave via adoption, and our latest performance on that for the last 12 months, 2023-24, is 11%. So of people that left care, 11% of them left via an adoption order. The national average is 10%, so we're a little bit above the national average. Generally, the national average has been coming down over the last few years. The other key measure for adoption performance is timeliness. This year, our timeliness has improved significantly. There are two timeliness measures that are important for adoption. One is, and it's measured in the number of days. One is the number of days on average that children adopted take from becoming a child in care to being placed for adoption, legally placed for adoption with their respective adopters. And our performance actually today is about 414 days, and the national, that sort of what was previously the national government target was 426 days. And the other key measure is the number of days on average for children adopted in the year that it takes from the court decision, making the placement order for the child, and the decision by the agency decision maker for the council on a match of said child with the family, the adoptive family. And our position on that today is 114 days, and the previous government target, the government targets have fallen away since the previous government action plan, but the standard was 121 days. So, and we've got better at that over this year. And that is largely a combination of the partnership work between our social workers and Aspire social workers, the robust adoption and permanence tracking meetings that are having an effect, and the significant number of children, 19 children who are placed in early permanence placement. So that is when we place children with prospective adopters by approving them as foster carers before the court has decided that that's the plan. I can say a little bit more about that if people want, but I don't want to take too long on that answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Parry.
Thank you. Could we just unpick a little bit this notion of the sort of 20-mile radius in terms of placement? Because my understanding is that clearly some of our young people will be placed outside of their natural locality for reasons of their own protection or protection of their other family members, and that's understood. But I imagine that is a relatively small percentage in the overall numbers we're talking about here. Those that are placed beyond the 20 miles, and bear in mind that Dorset is, east to west, a sort of 60-mile area, so it's very easy to still be in county, but beyond the 20 miles. What's the frequency of reviewing that? And I'm very conscious that too much placement movement is detrimental to a young person's well-being. All the evidence suggests that we want to get it right first time wherever possible. So what needs to happen? What's officers doing to review that process? What are we doing to recruit more foster carers in those areas, for example, where we see that there is a limited number of foster placements available? Are we going to have to intervene with additional provision of our own? Or are we going to be more successful in recruiting foster carers? What's the plan? How do we, that whole space around that 20-mile thing, how are we going to deal with that challenge?
So there are a range of reasons why children may be placed more than 20 miles away. On some occasions, children might live with kinship foster carers, so family members, and that's right. And that family member might live 25 miles away or even 50 miles away. It's right to place children with family where that's safe and suitable. We would do that despite the distance. Another reason might be, another cohort of children that feature quite significantly in those that live more than 20 miles away are unaccompanied minors. And that group of young people has grown this year. And I think it's about now 12% of our care population is unaccompanied minors. And we haven't managed to place the majority of them in Dorset council area or within 20 miles. So that is a challenge for us, and many of them do not want to live in Dorset. So that's another cohort. There are sometimes children with particular needs that need more specialist provision that we don't have in Dorset, and that would be reasonable to meet their needs by placing them somewhere further away. And there is the fact that we need more provision, and sometimes we just haven't got the provision, and our sufficiency strategy clearly names that we need more provision. We have a refreshed retention and recruitment strategy for our foster carers. We increasingly want to recruit more local foster carers. We have recruited more foster carers this year than we did last year, and we've lost fewer this year than we did last year. We have invested through our capital programme in children's homes and open new children's homes this year. You'll see from some of the other reports, Hazewood short break facility has opened, Chestnut House for disabled children. Before the year before that, College House. So we have recognised that we need to do more locally. There is more to do. We are working on that in our sufficiency strategy. We want children to be placed locally wherever we can.
If I may come back with a supplementary, you mentioned sufficiency strategy. When would that be taken to this board, for example, for us to be able to have our input? When do you anticipate that happening?
I think sufficiency strategy has been here and has been to overview and to cabinet previously. I certainly took it to overview.
It's been to overview.
Kelly took it to cabinet.
We should next protocol.
We can bring it here. Absolutely.
We
can bring it here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move on now. Item 9, Corporate Parenting Board Annual Report. Oh, that's you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Renise Drury. I'm the Head of Service for Children in Care.
This report captures the work, the progress, the achievements that have been made in the preceding year, and also pays some attention to the progress that has been achieved over the duration of the previous children or the corporate parenting strategy. As you can see, it has been a very busy year, and I just wanted to identify some of the highlights of this year. Our corporate parenting data set has been strengthened. It is a big document, and it always stimulates great questions and great conversation. One of the things that we do want to do going forward is really pay attention to actually, are we asking the right questions or capturing the right data that our children want us to capture? Because this is very good information for us in measuring performance, but we also want to hold those key indicators that our children want to identify and talk about as well. We have opened Chestnut House, home for children who are disabled, and also Hazelwood Bungalow, our short break home, which was recognised in our recent SEND inspection, where some of our parents were really speaking positively about the impact this has had for them as families and for their children. We've seen an increase in the number of fostering households, so 168 to 187 in the year. We've celebrated our foster carers, as we do every year, with a fantastic awards event. We've launched a further 3 Mockingbird constellations, and we know that, Councillor Parry, coming back to your question about that 20-mile, making sure that we retain our foster carers is so important, and we know that through Mockingbird, that really helps us to do that. We've established a dedicated service for our care leavers and our unaccompanied children. And also, much earlier in the year, we welcomed Ofsted for a focus visit on the arrangements for 16 and 17-year-old care leavers, and also have welcomed Ofsted in the inspections of our homes, the Cherries and College House, and had a recent inspection a month or so ago, again in College House. We've continued to work with our children and young people through Dorset Youth Voice, and also develop those action plans against the priorities identified by children and young people through those annual surveys that are undertaken through our collaboration with Coram Voice, so our Bright Spot surveys, which really help us inform our strategies, because without the voices of our children, they wouldn't be worth anything. I'd like to draw members of the board to attention to figure 1. I'm hoping that this is a really helpful table which really captures the work that has been undertaken and is helpful in understanding that progress over the last year, 23-24, and also the direction from 2020 to 24. We've made use of this information alongside the voices of our children to inform our strategy, which is another paper for us to pay attention to today. Because I think this actually helps us think about, okay, so we have made some great progress in a number of areas. The number of our children in care has decreased, and although we can see the impact of us welcoming our unaccompanied children over the last year, our placement stability has also improved. So again, making sure that when we find homes for our children, that they are those forever homes. Also, whilst there has been a slight dip in the performance achieved through adoption, we know that in the last year, we know that actually the changing demographic of our children in care population impacts on those numbers. Because if we look at the number of children who are 18 plus who have left care in the last year, there's a much greater proportion. So I think 27% of children who are 18 plus left care, as opposed to 21% the previous year. And so with that changing number, then that impacts on the number of children who leave care through adoption or special guardianship as well. It's really pleasing because we have worked so hard with our health colleagues to see an improving picture around the health of our children. Again, I think it's something that we want to really now understand the impact of that. So just because children are going to their dental appointments, actually, what difference is that making to our children? Because children are having an annual health assessment, and what is the impact for those children? So that's something that we want to take forward. Also, our strengths and difficulties questionnaires, we can see that actually, although the average strength and difficulties question number has come down, we are very mindful of the fact that actually we are not enough of those questionnaires have been completed. So with 63% being completed, we recognise that there are 37% of our children who don't have their needs assessed through that questionnaire. So that's an absolute area of focus. We can also see that the number of percentage of care leavers living in unsuitable accommodation, that has decreased. And as we've just talked about, we are focused as well on care leavers in education, employment and training. I'm going to stop there. I understand you've read all of the papers and just would like to offer any questions at this point.
Can I just make a statement to you, or a query really? The SDQs,
yes.
I don't know if my colleagues know about SDQs and what they look like, or because I know I've assessed with them. I just wonder if it'd be really interesting for people to have a copy of that,
yes,
so that they can see what that is.
Yes.
Because I've always found them really impactful with particularly around education healthcare plans.
Yeah.
And they're really useful as an indicator.
Yes, absolutely. And and maybe we can actually use that as one of our workshops as well, yes, when we focus on the emotional well-being of our young people. But before we do that, we'll absolutely circulate that.
Yeah, because it's really impactful and really indicates lots of areas for the child, and then you can go forward with making plans for them appropriately. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Claire.
My apologies. I should have said earlier, Councillor Claire Sutton, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Skills. There's obviously lots of absolutely wonderful stuff in here, which is a tribute to all of you. Not to say it's all perfect, but it's really fantastic. But also, my predecessor in this role, Councillor Quayle, and before that Andrew Parry. There's so much brilliant stuff here to pay tribute to. But obviously, there's no point really me going on about that, is there? Because that's there. I'm just going to pick up on one thing in particular, which is at 6.7, and it's about the focus of the virtual school, and it says eradicating the use of suspensions and the number of children missing education. That just ain't possible, is it? Particularly in in an environment where we're dealing with multi-academy trusts, some of whom have particularly poor records, to my knowledge, of suspensions and exclusions. So I think there's a bit of an overclaim in there, to be honest. But I suppose more importantly, I'd like to know what active steps we are taking to reduce, probably rather than eliminate, the number of suspensions. To be frank.
Shall I say my name again?
Yes.
Again. Jo Smart-Richards, Service Manager for the Virtual School. In terms of suspensions, we are at the moment 50 children have been suspended this year during the academic year. And at this point last year, there were 49. What we have seen is that in the previous year, there was a pattern of high suspensions within our Dorset schools, particularly secondary schools, lower levels of suspensions within primary schools in Dorset and out of county. And we've worked really hard. We want to be aspirational, actually, in terms of belonging for our children. Our children in care should not be being suspended because it creates a sense of not belonging somewhere. And what we've seen this year is a decrease in the number of children being suspended in our Dorset secondary schools. But we've seen an increase in those young people being suspended out of county. So the work in terms of attending reintegration meetings after a suspension with the virtual school lead alongside with the specialist teachers within the team coming alongside and working with our locality colleagues has seen an impact on suspensions within secondary schools for children in care. And we now need to shift our focus for the next academic year to those out of county schools and some of our small primary schools within Dorset that have started to suspend, potentially where they are finding they're not thinking creatively around how else we could support our youngest children within care. So this, and eradicate is a strong word, but actually none of our children should be being suspended, and that's where it comes from, as a place of that.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments?
Teresa.
Thank you, Chair. So I can't really say it any better than the fabulous Jo Smart Richards, but we will keep that as an ambition. I think it's absolutely right that we are, even I'd rather be reporting on a regular basis to this board that we haven't yet made that achievement rather than not having it. So we don't talk about narrowing the gap in attainment, we talk about closing it. It is a very aspirational view. However, what you've just heard from Jo is that our schools can share that aspiration. It is possible for schools to do things other than suspend and still respond to whatever issue it is that is arising. And that's the kind of creative, as Jo has just described, response that we're looking for from our schools, with our foster carers, with our social workers, to be thinking ahead and thinking, this child is struggling. I'm going to pick up the phone and we're going to do something creative today rather than a suspension, which isn't a very creative thing to do. So aspirational, yes. Ambitious, yes. Let's hope that at some point in the future we can begin to see that being ever more achieved.
Thank you. Councillor Parry.
Thank you. It's just following on that same vein. Are you seeing a pattern of behaviour from particular schools to, you know, there's like a hotspot of a particular school or a particular year group pattern? A certain, I know there was a flavour in terminology at one time of persistent disruptive behaviour, yet the first time we heard about it was at the point of suspension. Have we got that better relationship embedded with the schools now, where these suspensions aren't coming out the blue in the way that they were? Is that the sense you're getting, or?
Thank you, absolutely. So what we historically, the main cause for a child in care to be suspended was persistent disruptive behaviour, and there was lots of work that went on around, if it's persistent, why hasn't that been challenged and changed and thought creatively before it gets to the level of the suspension? What we've seen this academic year is the main reason for suspensions, and I'll use the language from the DFE, is about assault against another pupil. So what we're seeing is a real reduction in that persistent disruptive behaviour as a reason for suspensions, but an increase in an event that happens and an incident that happens that involves other young people within the setting. So we're having to change our tact in terms of how we work with schools around what could be done differently to help a young person to regulate before it gets to the situation where there's an incident of that level.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
So Councillor Matt Bell, representing Radipole. I'm new to this board, so forgive me if this has been explained previously, but I'm looking at figure 1, where it talks about initial health assessments, and it goes from 40, basically the data's a large range, so 40% April 20 for initial health assessments, then 0%, and then up to 79% again. What's the reason for the 0%?
Okay, so that measures timeliness of initial health assessment in the month, that one. So in that month, of the children that come into care, all of them should have had, into the measure, their initial health assessment within 20 days of coming into care. And in that month, very disappointingly and very poorly, none of them did. Off the top of my head, I don't know how many children that affected. Obviously, the number of children coming into care in any 1 month changes. So those figures are monthly figures. And I think I said before that we have had an up and down year with some of those measures, and we've been very much working with our health partners to get good performance and stabilise it. But it's an ongoing piece of work.
Thank you. And Louise Drury, so I think there are a number of moving parts in the initial assessment, health assessments, but also where we know that actually where children are placed outside of Dorset, then there is a greater challenge in achieving that health assessment within 20 working days. And we know that actually within our own health services and with us, we track this really closely. So we have a monthly meeting, and so we can see that actually the performance has improved. And I think our relationship with our health colleagues is so much stronger that I know that even if we have missed that 5-day deadline to get our consent in for whatever reason, then actually our health colleagues go absolutely above and beyond still to achieve that 20-day timeframe. Also, I think another impact has sometimes been for our unaccompanied children, and achieving that within 20 days has sometimes skewed those figures. Also, the number of children coming into care changes, and so when we have a small number of children who come into care, and maybe say 2 children, and if both of those have been placed outside of Dorset, then that can then impact on and create a 0%. It's not what we want to see. We want all of our children to achieve that initial health assessment within those 20 days and work towards that. Thank you.
So Duncan Surrey House, Vice Chair of this place and Ward Member for Porthmullen. I just wanted to go back to what Jo and Teresa spoke about. And I think with the reduction of suspensions of our children across Dorset schools and outside of county, I think persistent disruptive behaviour and cohort assault are actually 2 sides of the same coin, and probably go back to most likely early years trauma. So I think within that creative support, if there's anything that we can do to support education professionals in trauma-informed provision, then I think many of these behaviours can either be escalated for support or dealt with more mindfully in the education setting.
Good afternoon. I'm Miriam Lee, Head of Children Thriving in Education and Principal Educational Psychologist. So you're right. So one of the pieces of work that we've been doing with all our schools is to roll out therapeutic thinking. So that supports the schools to enable them to think differently and think therapeutically around meeting the needs of children, and that sits alongside relational practice as well. And in order to support them to implement that, so that includes all schools are invited to attend tutor training, and they then roll that out to their schools. We're in those schools where we have seen them implement it. So they've done the training and then rolled it out within the school. It is a culture change. It's an ethos change. It takes some time, but the schools that have really taken it on board, what we have seen is a reduction in suspensions. And alongside that relational and trauma-informed approach, those two go hand in hand. And we have seen really quite a significant reduction in those schools in terms of suspensions. And we continue to do that. So that's being offered to schools free. And we are coming alongside, so the educational psychologists and specialist teachers, and also our special schools who are very well experienced in understanding this approach in our learning centres, are coming alongside our mainstream schools to support them in implementing that approach.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on. Item 10, Fostering Service Annual Report. Lisa Welms, Service Manager, Fostering Report.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Lisa Welms, Acting Service Manager for Fostering and Supported Lodging Service. Hopefully you'll manage to read the prepared and provided annual report for the fostering services today. I wanted to bring out some key highlights of our service that we currently have. We have 187 foster carers currently, and this is an increase from 169 at the same time of last year. The highlight of the year for us has been the growth in Mockingbird constellations. We know that that provides an extended family feel and really grounding ethos for our children and families that are involved in those constellations. We currently have 5 and we're about to launch Constellation 6 with a further 3 before April 2025. Another highlight for us is that we've been able to provide a 15% fee increase to foster carers, which was approved in April 2023, and that was really helped with the current climate and people's family lives of where we are. We also celebrated our foster carers, which is really important to understand the wealth of what they bring to our children, because without them we just wouldn't have homes for our children, for some of them that can't live with their families. The annual award ceremony that took place celebrated 39 carers being recognised for long service awards this year, with one of those dedicating 51 years to our children. And then cumulatively, they've celebrated have afforded our children between them 695 years. So I'll let that sit with you for a second, because that really has afforded our children nurture, love and stability, which is so important. We've had 14 new mainstream carers that we've recruited and approved, and we know that we need to grow more. We're not sitting on our laurels in that respect. We recognise one child living outside of Dorset is too many, and the number of children living outside of Dorset is reducing, as discussed by Paul earlier today. We are continuing our work to ensure that our children and young people can live close to family, friends and existing relationships. And this includes developing our recruitment and retention strategy, and our development with working our partnership in the South West Regional Hub, and our continued progression of our Mockingbird constellations, as well as of involving our existing foster carers in our recruitment events, which is really important, because I can tell you how great it is to foster. I don't live and breathe that as a foster carer. If you're a foster carer, you can tell it from your own experience, and I think that's important to be able to get that story across. There has been a net gain of 27 connected carers, or as we will be referring to them moving forward as kinship carers when we develop our specialist kinship service. This means children remain living with significant family members when they cannot remain in their own home with parents, and that is vital for maintaining family links and relationships. Moving on to LADO referrals within our fostering service, and we've had 27 of those to our local authority designated officer. And these are where there's been allegations against our fostering carers during the last 12 months. And after deliberation with our designated officers, 9 have resulted in no further action and 9 were managed through standards of care. And that is where we continue to work with our foster carers to look at the standards under the regulations, and we work with them to provide support and training to ensure that they meet those standards and return back to panel for further to be approved. Naturally, this has meant, with increased work with our LADOs, this has meant some increase in referrals. That isn't what we want to see. However, it has meant us seeking further advice through and oversight from our LADO service, and we would expect this to indicate that the fostering service are seeking appropriate support from our LADO services. The number includes all inquiries, advice and standards of care referrals. We can already see that the number is balancing back, and we expect that to continue. It is not always an accurate picture when recording substantiated LADOs for foster carers on a month-to-month basis, and you will see that there will be a difference in reports, and that is because I've used data that is from our annual fostering data return rather than a month-by-month return. The LADO service continues to work closely and collaboratively with us, and that includes in completing auditing and new training being rolled out to our service, and the return of our carers to panel to improve services to our foster carers. There have remained a few cases awaiting to return to panel, and that has seen a slightly lengthier process than that we would like. However, it has been appropriate and right to do that to enable that we've completed thorough investigations and a fair process, and take into account any new information that may have come to light. When carers are subjected to LADO, they are supported independently by Foster Talk, who we pay to offer that service, as well as being supervised by our social workers. And this includes increasing our panel dates when we don't have one set up and we need to add dates to them to make sure foster carers are seen. Thank you.
Are there any questions, comments?
Thank you, thank you. We'll move on to item 11, which, oh, sorry. Councillor Sutton.
Sorry, Chair, I was trying not to be first again. I thought someone else. Lots of really great stuff. What I'm really excited about is the kinship service and looking at the numbers within. I'm a little bit confused about some of the different numbers in different paragraphs. So I'll just refer to one paragraph in particular, which is 3.1, which says that the 12-month period has seen 14 new fostering households and 54 connected persons. So what I'm understanding is that whilst obviously the vast majority of our fostering places are mainstream, increasingly there will be the acceleration of kinship places. We're looking at that increasing quite heavily. That's what the numbers are telling me. Is it?
They absolutely are, and quite rightly so, because wherever possible, we want our children to be living with those close relationships and families.
In that case, that's just fantastic. And the other thing I just wanted to highlight in the numbers at 3.5, 45 new assessments in progress as of March. So hopefully we're looking at another bump.
We will, yeah, absolutely, you're right.
Numbers. Okay.
Yes, yes.
That's lovely, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to just add, so I don't want to waste any time, but it's been a fantastic performance by the fostering service, delivering almost our sixth Mockingbird programme. We've probably done that faster than anyone else in the country. We've certainly got more Mockingbird constellations than anyone in the southwest, and we're sort of up with Leeds, who are said to be a forerunner of the Mockingbird sort of model. So well done, Lisa and the team. I attended the celebration event for foster carers, and I'm not particularly prone to being emotional, but seeing those people who fostered for 50 years does bring the tears to the eye when you see them, and they're pretty sprightly as well. So I hope I'm in that condition after doing 50 years of that kind of stuff. That would be really fantastic. So, and it's really good that the fostering service is now growing. The kinship carer stuff is really important. We want children to live with family members. That is a strategy within the fostering service, but it is part of our wider strategy for delivering our Pathfinder model. So probably you'll have all heard about our Pathfinder developments. A key pillar in that is unlocking the potential of the wider family network. And part of that, apart from working closely with families, keeping the wider family involved, is identifying wider family members to be alternative kinship carers if those children can't stay with their parents. So the proportion of kinship carers is about a third of our fostering service at the minute. We think that will grow, and we think that will be good for children.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Am I right in thinking the pathway project you were talking about earlier the financing for that ends in March 2015?
The identified funding for the Pathfinder ends in March 25.
Won't have any impact on anything else that's going on. The kinship work, that won't be impacted by.
No, the kinship work will continue. We're continuing to do kinship work. We did that before the Pathfinder funding, and we will continue to do it after the Pathfinder funding. The Pathfinder funding is enabling us to invest in additional capacity, not particularly in the fostering service, but other areas. One quick example of that is 14 additional targeted youth worker posts that will help support schools to work with young people in all sorts of ways to help them, but that might help them to reduce exclusions and the need for exclusion. So Pathfinder will be very influential. The funding for that particular Pathfinder ends 25. We have been reassured by the Department of Education that they understand our need for some other kind of settlement to continue that funding going forward, because that is what the model is based on.
Thank you. Teresa Levy.
Yeah, thank you. So I think what I would say is that we are dependent upon a future settlement, and we've looked carefully at the kind of proposals that are there, and we'll begin campaigning as soon as possible after July the 5th to make sure that we do have an ongoing arrangement which allows us to continue with the Pathfinder arrangements. The kinship care service isn't dependent upon it, but what we know is that the changes that we've been able to make would absolutely make it easier for families to care for their children at all sorts of levels. as foster carers, but pre-foster care too. So the element of funding that we're getting from the Pathfinder that's making a big difference in kinship care are the family network support packages that we can give to family members to keep them together outside of ever having to even become a foster carer. So we welcome our families being approved as foster carers, but we also welcome them having support to care for their kin without actually having to go through that process too. So it is an important part, and we'd welcome all political support for that on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to item 11, fostering panel chair annual report. Leanne Chorley.
Good afternoon. My name is Leanne Chorley. I'm the independent panel chair for the Dorset's fostering panel. You'll see from my report covers from the 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March. And I hope you'll see it's shown a busy year with 35 panels being held and hearing a total of 121 cases over those 35 panels. We are an independent panel coming from different backgrounds and sectors across the UK. Some people travelling as far as Wales to come and sit on our panel once or twice a month. Our primary function is to make recommendations about the suitability and continued suitability in terms of approval of foster carers for Dorset. The panel also oversees and reviews foster carers, advises on matters related to the fostering service, and ensures that quality standards are maintained with safe placements and homes for children. The panel is governed by fostering legislation and guidance. Recommendations are made through reading the paperwork that is submitted to us by the service and conversations with social workers and the foster carers or applicants. We will give advice where there may be gaps that need filling, and particularly with this new trend of increasing amount of kinship or connected carers coming through panel. This is a new area which the service are going to be investing in panel members in the coming year to make sure that they are fully up to speed with everything that Dorset has to offer, to make sure that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, essentially. And we want to make sure that all children, regardless of whether they're in mainstream foster care or kinship foster care, receive the national minimum standards of care that all children should expect. So a positive to note is the increase of approvals, both mainstream and connected carers, and the reduction in number of resignations, significant reduction in number of resignations this year in comparison to 22-23. We've seen an increase in the number of mainstream approvals from 12 to 15 and the number of connected from 23 to 31. The number of resignations has reduced from 33 to 6 in 23-24, indicating a level of contentness from foster carers. Some of the highlights, you've all read the report, but some of the highlights for you is that written feedback has been received from foster carers, applicants and professionals. These have identified that their experience at panel as being sensitively treated, experiencing empathy and being helped to feel at ease, feeling valued, listened to and being asked skillful, relevant questions, receiving 4 to 5 across the board for overall experience at their attendance at panel. The reviewing period has seen an additional vice chair being appointed, 4 new panel members added to the central list and change in panel administration. There have been 4 panel members, unfortunately, that have resigned during the reporting period. We do need to look in the coming year to adding to the panel central list. Panel members have adopted a trauma-informed approach to their questions, and we have seen Serenita's therapeutic parenting assessments come through panel. Dorset last year was one of the first in the country, well, the first in the country to trial these therapeutic assessments. So we've had to see them come through, and they were great. Panel profile sheets have been updated and more accessible to applicants, and the next step is to share these with children so that they can feel part of the process and understand the backgrounds and experiences of panel members who are making recommendations about their lives. We also have seen children, in particular when it comes to kinship care, coming and voice their own views appropriately at panel, which is welcomed and actively encouraged. I would highlight at this point that the relationship between the panel and the service has continued to develop. This allows for a robust overview and scrutiny and feedback with transparent and challenging conversations with senior management to support the best outcomes for young people. These conversations are not shied away from and are welcomed by members of the senior leadership team, which is refreshing. In conclusion, relationships continue to be built, the processes are more efficient. Generally, panel is a positive experience for all who attend. The strength-based panel, which has high challenge, accompanied by advice and guidance to support the service. Don't think I need to say any more.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any comments or queries? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 12, Care Leavers Annual Report. Jane McLennan, Head of Service, Care Leavers and UASC.
Thank you. I'm obviously Matthew Chislett here to talk.
Oh,
on behalf of. Sorry. All right. Thank you. So the annual report covered off from the 1st of April 23 to March 2024, and I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to what we're proud of as a service. We've managed to develop a number of suitable, affordable, secure accommodation for our young people, up to 21, which is a huge, up to 21 places for our young people, which is incredibly positive for them and for us as we work with them. That's spread across Kirtleton, which some of you have visited. We've also had come online Clarence Road, which is great. It's mid-level, mid-terrace property. And then we have also the Leon Centre, which is just next to, well, near Weymouth College, offering up to 6 bedrooms for our young people, for our care leavers. Really, really positive. It has a massive impact, as I'm sure you'll see, saw from the report, in terms of secure accommodation, impact on mental health, securing employment, things like that. So really, really positive for us. The other bit that I wanted to draw attention to, and I know it's been mentioned in other reports, we've had Ofsted obviously come in May 23. We've seen a focus on our performance around supervision, with it consistently now being over 86%. We also have seen 100% for those in 4 weekly, and the 4 weekly really is for the young people that are seen to be in unsuitable accommodation. So there's additional supervisions that are given, and that's normally picked up on myself as a service manager to have oversight of that. We've also had an incredibly positive step for our young people, with the council approving in September 23 a protected characteristic for our young people that are care leavers. Extremely positive step for our young people. And from memory, I think we're one of around 50 that have done that nationally, which is really positive for us. We've also seen the launch of our unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people team. That's been amazing. We've effectively recruited to those posts. We've got 3 social workers, soon to be 4, and then 3 PAs in the service. And it's really about developing and maintaining that level of expertise within their service. So really passionate about that. We've also had 2 Department for Education funded programs. So the Staying Close program, which is giving us extra money, but we've also seen money from the DfE around mentoring support. And that, again, is for both programs, is about reducing isolation and developing links and a network of support, and increasing the emotional well-being of our young people. So they're all intertwined for our young people. I also wanted to take the opportunity to just say what we're thinking of moving forward. I know we touched on education and employment earlier today, but there's a number of things that we're working on to continue to develop that. For example, we continue to work with our young people and know the young people that are just about ready, and supporting them to get into it. We have got 21 young people at university, and I'd mentioned earlier that we had 8 on an apprenticeship scheme, but we're looking to get that up to 17 over the next 12 months, which will really be positive. We've also seen investment in our pathway to employment team with a newly recruited personal advisor who will have oversight of that, which again will gain strength in sort of the opportunities and managing that cohort of young people. We've also seen under the Staying Close model, building the relationships with our young people and having an ambition to get them back into some sort of education, employment and training, and making use of existing resources that we have available. That's it from me from summary, unless we have any questions.
Anyone have any questions, comments? Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thanks,
I'm trying to do it again, but not doing it very well. I just wanted to really acknowledge, all the amazing amount of work going on, and just pick out a couple of observations. Quite honestly, I've worked in social housing for a number of the last couple of decades, and the employment of 2 housing officers, one using external funding, is absolutely fantastic. Really, really, really critical. In terms of the feedback from the care leavers, some of the numbers are obviously quite sad, and some of them are, the 89% of the trusted adult, I was quite encouraged by. Obviously, you don't want there to be 11% that don't, but nevertheless. And actually, I was surprised that only 27% so they're in financial difficulties. And obviously, again, that's 27% too many. But given that, you know, the cost of living crisis, I was surprised that wasn't higher. So I'm sure that's a tribute to, I've seen some of the work that's going on in the background to ensure that that's the case. And finally, just a shout out for the fact that you know, former two care leavers as apprentices on the mentoring programme is obviously a massive cheer. So that's great.
Thank you, very positive, thanks. Item 13, Aspire Adoption Annual Report. No, is somebody giving the report or are we just approving and adopting it?
We've got.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. My name's Laura Wood. I'm the agency advisor with Aspire Adoption. I'm going to present Alan Charlton's report today, so bear with me if I haven't got all the answers to any questions you might have. I should do my best. So I know you've all had a chance to read the report. I'm just going to pull out some headlines. So Aspire was formed in 2017 and we undertake all adoption matters for Dorset and BCP. We're responsible for recruiting and assessing prospective adopters, family finding for children with placement orders and providing support for adopters, children and adoptive adults. My role as agency advisor is quite key with Dorset because there's two of us that work that link with Dorset and we offer support for social workers and senior managers, anything related to adoption. Aspire work in partnership with Dorset and BCP, and Alan Charlton works closely with other regional adoption agencies and is involved with national projects, all of which trying to improve our practice and outcomes for our children. One of the things that makes Aspire Adoption unique is that after should be placed for adoption decision, family finders are involved until the adoption order is granted. So the other 31 regional adoption agencies withdraw their involvement once the child is placed with prospective adopters. It's a real benefit for Dorset children because it means that they have the expertise of a family finder to support the social worker right way through until the court order is made. The family finders become the allocated worker for children aged 2, for Dorset children aged 2. So that's also a really good thing for Dorset children because again they've got the family finders with the expertise to ensure that things are done within good time to get to adoption order stage. Just pulling out some highlights from the performance data. Last year there were more boys than girls adopted across Dorset and BCP, and in total across the two authorities there were 36 boys adopted and 23 girls, 10 of which were over 5. And that's a real achievement because there's a myth that older children aren't adoptable, but actually we always strive to do our best to any child under the age of 10, really always try and seek an adoption placement for them. We've placed all of our sibling groups bar one pair with in-house adopters, and that's very positive because obviously interagency adoptions are expensive and you know it's much better to place our children with our adopters. So we're pleased about that. In terms of should be placed for adoption decisions, Dorset has made the same amount should be placed for adoption decisions this year as they made in the last year, 2022-23, and that's 25 should be placed for adoption decisions. Placement orders, there's been a decrease of just one placement order granted this year. That's from 19 to 18. And that's really good for Dorset because actually the courts now are able to make care orders without placement orders, and what that means there's a delay in a placement order being made for children, but in Dorset that's not happening, which is really positive. I think there was just one child where they had a care order made and there was a delay in making the placement order. And I think that's down to the tracking that we do. Aspire work really closely with Dorset to track children from PLO right the way through to the court order. And I know that Louise Drury also meets with Alan Charlton, our service manager, on a monthly basis and really closely track those children to ensure that things are happening as they should be to prevent any delays.
In terms of adoption orders, there were 16 adoption orders for children made in 23-24. This is a reduction compared to the previous year, but that was due to that previous year having more adoption orders being made because the year before there'd been a delay with the Somerset ruling. So it's a bit, I don't know if you're all aware of that, but what that meant was that the Somerset ruling prevented some adoption orders being made. So that tipped them into the year 22-23, which then looks as though our figures in 23-24 were lower, but there's a good reason why. The other thing to say was that in January 24, we did have 5 applications in court for adoption orders, but unfortunately they have now been made. 4 of them have been made, but by the time this report was written, they hadn't been, and that was due to some delays by the court. And there are delays happening at the courts because now parents are being encouraged to, and rightly so, to challenge placement orders. So that's what's happening, and so there is some delay being caused for children in that respect. In terms of children placed, there's a slight increase in children being placed in 23-24, and of the 90% of Dorset children, they were placed with Aspire educators. Timeliness has improved. Dorset are doing really well at minimising delay for children needing adoption, better than the national average for mentoring care for being placed with adopters, and I know that Paul has just explained some of those figures to you. There's also been a decrease in the time from placement order to being matched with adopters. As I said, we track children from PLO through, so we know the children that are coming, and we then liaise, or I will then liaise in my role with our family finding team, with our recruitment and assessment team, and we can fast track some adopters if we know some adopters, for example, are keen to adopt a sibling group. We are aware of a sibling group coming through, and we will do our best to fast track those adopters and prioritise getting them through to panel. Early permanence has been increased from 19 early permanent placements of last year compared to the previous year. So that's really positive for children. Early permanence is often referred to as EP, so you might hear us refer to it as EP, and it's where prospective adopters that are approved adopters can be given temporary approval as foster carers, so that for a specific child, so that it's a way of, if we know adoption is quite likely to be the plan for that child, we can get them placed with their carers at the earliest opportunity, and that's really positive for children. The reason we think that there's been an increase is that our prospective adopters have early permanence training when they're going through the approval process. The courts also have had lots of training regarding early permanence. The Dorset social work staff have a better understanding of early permanence, and there's early permanence champions within Dorset now. So we're all working together to seek to use early permanence wherever it's appropriate. Recruitment of adopters, is down in Aspire as it is nationally. The majority of our inquiries come from Google. We're obviously striving to recruit more adopters. We don't have a marketing officer. We're constantly discussing within the team how can we reach out to more adopters. We are in the process of developing a recruitment campaign, and we are trying to be creative, but we're really proud of what we've done, and we have placed large sibling groups in this last year. They're not in this report. We have managed to place a sibling group of 4 Dorset children with adopters, which is pretty unheard of, and we're really proud of that. We are creative. We have to, we've helped adopters with house improvements if it's meant they can accommodate an extra sibling if they weren't expecting to have a sibling group of 3, for example. So again, it comes down to really close working relationships between Aspire and Dorset. We offer post-adoption and special guardianship support, and our support team is extremely busy. We're a really small team. There's been an increase in demand for post-adoption and special guardianship support. The volume of calls to duty is high. There's a waiting list of about 6 to 8 weeks for need assessment and consultation. But in the meantime, we do offer signposting
There's a website that is really good which has got resources. We try and introduce peers to adopters to support each other. We offer coffee mornings and walking. So there is lots of things. We also do training about therapeutic parenting, but we recognise, that the support is needed, and we do what we can with that. Also thinking about special guardianship, that's going to come back into house. I think that's reported in our report. Special guardianship is planning on coming back into Dorset, so that'll be part of the kinship team. And finally, our Aspire Adoption Panel, which is a big part of my role. The adoption panels continue to meet virtually twice a month, and we made 29 approvals, 35 matches, and there were 7 withdrawal of approvals. The adoption panel does offer a RAG rating of social work reports that come to panel, so that allows for measurable assessment of the quality of the reports, and the majority of Dorset's reports are green. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments before or questions? So we are to Paul, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. There's some really positive stuff there about performance for adoption, for children that need adoption. Starting position is we don't want any children adopted, really. We want children to stay with their families, but where it's safe and suitable for them, we want children to secure permanent family as soon as possible. So achieving adoption, even if timely, is really good. So well done, good joint work between our social workers and Aspire. I want to just say about sibling groups. We have been successful, as Laura has said, with sibling groups, and that adapting families' homes has been another example of good use of Dorset Council's capital investment. So that's been used off a pot of funding to invest in foster carers and adoptive family homes to do things exactly like that, keep sibling groups together so we don't have to split families up, and we don't have to buy something else far away, much more expensive. So I just wanted to highlight that as good creative use of the Dorset pound to achieve efficiencies and keep families together in brilliant permanent arrangements.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that the Corporate Parenting Board approve Aspire Adoption. We approve their annual report and statement of purpose. So can I have all in favour to approve, please? So no against.
Yep, it's unanimous.
It's unanimous. So thank you and thank you. Item 14. Youth Voice Strategy for Care Experience and Children and Young People. Kay Wright.
So my name's Mandy Jarvis. I'm Youth Voice Officer, and Kay unexpectedly can't be here and she sends her apologies. I'm not going to read the report because you've got it in front of you. I'm just going to tell you a bit about the background to what we're doing and give you some examples for it. And then hopefully you're going to have lots of questions for me about how you're going to be involved, because it's linked to Corporate Parenting Board as well. So I have the delight and privilege to hear the voices of our young people who are care experienced, who want to say something about service change, and that's very much linked to the work of this board. I've been in post 7 months now, and this report is about an update to our approach, how we are hearing, listening and acting on what our care experienced young people are saying, who we call our experts by experience, because unless we've been in care, we can't possibly understand what it's like. So it's really important we hear their voices. So yeah, the report explains some of our thinking, which is a development of this thing we're calling the network, and that replaces the language that has been used before around Child in Care Council and our Care Leaver Forum. We don't intend to use those words again, and that will become evident as to why as we go through it. So we've been having to think about how we hear the voices of our care experienced young people, and we know that we're not hearing the diversity of voices that we have. We have lots of different young people in care for different reasons, in different types of care. So we know that we haven't been hearing that diversity We also know that it costs young people to use their voice to talk about their stories and what's happened to them. And we also know that the language we use and how we work with our care experienced young people can be a barrier to them getting involved in this work. So the network comes as a result of those three things, wanting to change that and to work on those. So with the network, we really want to see an increased range of voices that we hear, and we're doing that by creating diverse spaces for our young people to be in, and recognising that young people who are care experienced should be able to choose when they talk to us and in what space they do that in and in who they do it to. We want to be trauma informed in our spaces, so that they are safe spaces for our young people to come into, and that nothing we do impacts on them, because we know that it can have a cost as they talk about where they are on their recovery journey. And we also want to make it feel really worthwhile for our young people to be involved with us. So that's where that listening, hearing and acting, as a young person said to me very quickly in the role, there's a big difference between listening and hearing. So I guess that's where this comes from. So how does it work? I thought I'd just explain it because it's a thing. So every year we get a survey from Core and Voice. One year it's 18, it's our older cohort, another year it's our younger cohort. That goes out to all our care experienced young people and they tell us how we're doing. We then ask them in a bit more detail, what does that mean for you? And then from that survey, we set the themes for Corporate Parenting Board. And up until recently, you've had young people step into Corporate Parenting Board 4 times a year as a workshop space to share some of what they've been through, and then for you to hear that. What we'd really want to do is use the network to create a network board. So we will, as a Youth Voice team, send an ask out across all our different spaces to say we're thinking about this. This is the topic we're thinking about, and as a Youth Voice team, we'll collate all those voices. And then a group of young people who have put up their hand to say they want to be on the network board will look at what we've heard. They'll look at the patterns, they'll look at the themes, they'll think about their own experience, and they will bring to you what they want to bring from what we've heard. And they will ask you for changes or what they want. I don't know what they're going to ask you, to be honest. We'll see what they say. But they're going to bring that to Corporate Parenting Board so that you hear it from them. And then hopefully we'll all discuss it. Have a chat. They know full well, we've got 9 young people possibly who have signed up to be in this space with us in various ways. They know full well that we can't say yes to everything, but they also know I've pledged that we will listen, and importantly that we will get back to them. So even if we're saying no, we say why, which I think we can all agree as adults we prefer that. So that's what we should have for our young people. The aim is to increase the voices that we hear, so we become more representative, and also so that we begin to see young people really affecting the decisions that we make for them. So that's the network. I thought I'd just give you some examples of what we've done as a team so that we're in a place to deliver that, if that's okay with you. So our first network board meeting is next week. As many of our young people who can are going to come in and meet with Jane and Louise and have a look at corporate board parenting agenda, look at that safe space, how we can make our corporate parenting board meetings safe for young people to be in. We have put a bid in with Core and Voice to support the work of the network board, particularly looking at our data set, so that we know we've got a really strong data set, as you heard today, but we also know if you ask our young people, they say, it doesn't mention what matters to me. So Core and Voice are looking to develop some work with that, and we've put a bid in to hopefully do that with them. We are recruiting an additional Youth Voice officer part-time to hear the voices, particularly of our separated young people for various reasons, as we know that's not a voice we've heard. So working with our unaccompanied asylum seekers, our Afghan refugee resettlement teams, the Ukraine project. We've already put in post, same time as I started, a Youth Voice worker who's focused particularly on hearing voices of children with special educational needs, and that's an area that we haven't had resource to do before, and that was the impact of that was already was noted in the last SEND inspection. Oh, you're nodding, that's great. And then, oh no, sorry, don't do that. And then We've got a plan in the summer to deliver some webinars to registered managers to reach out to our young people who are in residential care. And we're also reviewing how we use the voice of young people in our training and how we can really amplify that as a team. Yeah, so that's us, and I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Councillor Claire Sutton.
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's really, really good, really positive, really exciting. Just one very focused question. This is, sorry, it might be a bit of a tricky one. I'm referring back to some data that was in one of the other papers, which showed the divergence of ethnicity data between Dorset's population as a whole and our children in care. And in the paper, it talks about expanding diversity, really, always trying to promote greater diversity, but it doesn't particularly mention ethnicity. So I just wondered how representative the existing cohort is in relation to ethnicity.
When you say cohort, do you mean my cohort of youth voice people that I speak to, or do you mean the care population?
I'm trying to find where I was in the paper. Sorry, I've scribbled bits of information.
The bit about diversity, we know we're not hearing a range of voices in our care population. So there's a lot of spaces. I've got a long list of voices we're not hearing.
Oh, okay.
And that's probably because we're asking in the same way, only in one way, which is where the network comes from. So hopefully the idea with the network is, maybe can I give you an example of what we've done, and then that might explain it to you. So the next topic for Corporate Parenting Board in July is friendship. That comes off the Quorum Voice survey that says that our young people struggle with friendships. They particularly struggle because they feel different from their peers. So we wanted to unpick what that meant. So bearing in mind I'm new and it's a new way of working. So I've been to 6 teams and 1 Mockingbird constellation with the same question, as well as doing my own youth voice work with the young people we're in contact with, and gone, this is what we're thinking about. What have we got to say? And what have we come through, which automatically increases our range of diversity, because we're not just going through to the young people who have put their hands up to say, I want to work with youth voice, which actually demands a certain amount of resilience on their journey. So that's just the first time we've done it. But we heard from one young person anonymously through their PEP, which was not in a process, would have been before. And we've also, we haven't heard from her yet, but there's a young person living with their grandparents who is thinking about inputting. But again, that's not a voice. There's no way we would have heard that before. So it's in its infancy, but that's what I mean by diversity, being able to expand the range of voices we hear.
Really helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you. I'm loving the ambition and I'm loving the sense of pace behind it. It's just really important that we do get this firmly embedded and established. But there's an awful lot going on there. Can you just give us a sense of what the key top priorities are going to be? There's, if you were to come back here in 6 months' time, you would be saying to us, this is firmly embedded. We've delivered this. That's where we're at.
I don't want to come back here in 6 months' time. If it were really, it would be the network board that would be here.
Yeah,
but as it is, they can't come into this space because this is not trauma informed.
Oh.
So everything about this space is a no. So if I'm doing my job properly, then or this work is having the desired ambition, I won't be here. I will be supporting them beforehand to present their voice.
Yeah.
If I was also, I've got a list as long as your arm of places I would hear youth voice. So in the training that Miriam mentioned for tutor groups, my young people should be able to contribute to that. So it is ambitious, but if we don't hear our voices of children, there's no point doing it. Because when we get it wrong, it's devastating. So we need to hear it, learn from it, and they need to know that we're learning from it. So in terms of the immediate impact, I would hope that when they come in next week, they shake up the agenda. I know that's what I'd really hope, because then we're talking in a way that they can join in. And if anyone's free next week and wants to join us, amazing, come and meet the network board, because you're going to be working side by side. So my immediate ambition, I suppose, is that we move away from young people coming into this space to share their story and it feeling very unequal, because you don't tell me your story, I don't tell them my story. Actually, what I want them to do is to come into this place as an equal to you guys, to hold us to account for the work we're doing. And that's when we'll know we've got it right working. that they're asking the same, they're able to ask the same questions because they are the ones that are living it or have lived it. Is that a bit, is that okay? Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, good, that's me.
Thank you. So will you circulate the dates and everything about the network?
If you'd like, please. Yeah, next week. And then if anyone would like to, that would be amazing. Maybe not, no offence, but maybe not all of you. That might be a little bit. Well, no joke, because we did, Byron came to one at Kelton and a young person took one of our previous corporate board members away, was able to say to them about the impact of wearing a suit in those spaces. So that is actually something that practical is what we will be talking about next week. What can you guys do to help it be trauma informed? What can we do? And what can the young people do? So yeah, nail on the head. But yeah, I will send the dates. Yeah.
Thank you. And also, have you got a good age range of children taking part?
I would say we haven't, but I'm doing better. So there was a big gap between 15 and 17, which to be honest is probably the age we want the most because it's change age. But I've had a few step up. I can tell you the gaps we've got. So we really struggle to hear the voices of boys. I don't have any boys that I work with in that way, and that's something that we're talking to the virtual school about how we can do some of that work with it. Residential care, as I've said, supported lodgings, IFAs, so independent fostering agencies out of county, the kinship carers are the voices we haven't heard, unaccompanied asylum seekers, and I guess our youth justice, so our young people that are that experienced. So yeah, it's quite, I guess I know the gaps, and then it's a work in progress to fill those.
It's really positive that you actually know the gaps, because that's on the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably more gaps than I've said, but as I say, 7 months. So yeah, we're getting there. But yeah, it's a good bit of thinking.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a top priority, Councillor Parry, but one of my ambitions is that when we present each meeting the data set, that we've got some of those sort of subjective wellbeing sort of measures that we use annually with our Bright Spot survey. So Mandy referenced it really quickly that we are going to do some work with Quorum Voice to help us introduce those wellbeing measures into our everyday performance management. So we're not just looking at this board at things like, for example, initial health assessments undertaken, which probably don't interest children that much. They're very important. What we want to know about those is how healthy are our children and how healthy are our children feeling and those kind of things. So whilst not saying that those output measures aren't helpful to us, they are. The programme to work with Quorum Voice to embed more subjective, how does the young person feel? What's the outcome for the young person? Are they feeling good today? Do they feel positive about their future? Those kind of things that measure those different things. That project hopefully is going to help us do that on a more sort of week to week, month to month sort of performance measurement.
Just to add to that, Paul, if that's okay, just to say that we're starting that next week. So that's really part of the plan, is to look at the data set and with Louise and Jane to get our young people to almost rank it. So what's important to you, what's not important, and maybe we then look at having regular data set smaller. That's, I don't know how we'll do it, but it's be really important to have. It's interesting to have that conversation to start with them. This is what we measure. What's important to you? What's missing? So yeah, we're going to start that next week.
Yeah, and the Bright Spot survey has been really good in capturing a wider voice. Boys, girls, different ages. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Duncan Sarringhouse.
Thank you. Can I just remind all speakers that every time you speak, can you say who you are and where you are, just for the audio, because we're not able to be seen. Super presentation there about voices. I think it's so important. It's important that all of our children's voices are heard, and we know that some will be non-verbal, some will have profound speech and language delays. How do you hear their voice?
Mandy Jarvis, Youth Voice Officer. I would say probably we haven't heard it, if I'm honest, but recruiting, so at the same time as I joined the team, my amazing colleague Shao joined the team, and she comes with a real wealth of experience of working with those young people. We've been to meet some foster carers who I would say have probably some really of our most extreme sort of difficult needs, and begun to have that discussion. How we're going to do it, I don't have an answer for you, but we're beginning to think about how we do it. Is that I don't know if that's good enough, but so I know we're meeting with our Quoro, who has the oversight of those young people, and just trying to develop that work. But it's right at its infancy because it's not something we've done before, but we're working on it. In August, we're having our family fostering day in August has a particular SEND focus, and we're going to try and make that a really safe space, because feedback from foster carers is that they perhaps wouldn't bring their young people to family fostering days because they'd be worried about the noises they make, or not worried about them. They might not want to input, and they're taken up away from other people. So we're doing that in August. We've never done it before, so we might be sat there on our own, which would be fine if that's the case. But we're beginning to explore it, and I think it's only through those conversations that we'll get it right.
Thank you. Yes. Jo Smart-Richards, Service Manager for Virtual School. And just to add in terms of Youth Voice, that through the PEP meetings, so the Personal Education Planning meetings, we have to capture our young people's voices through that. And some of our settings are really creative about capturing the voice of children that perhaps aren't verbal. So we get lots of video footage. We have lots of presentations that our young people put together outside of meetings. They will come in and deliver those to the team that are there. So there's some really good opportunities that are already underway and are happening for our young people. So we do hear their voice in just very different ways across all of them.
Mandy Jarvis, Youth Voice Officer, is that okay, just to add in. So Shao, as part of her work, is also looking at developing a SEND network. So not just our care experienced young people, but our young people who have SEND needs across Dorset. To make sure that when we need to consult on them or make changes, or that we can get to their voice. So if you like, I'll be part of hers and she'll be part of mine, and we're going to be able to hear voices in that way. But again, that's a new piece of work, but that's why we've been recruited.
Thank you.
Hi.
Paul.
Thank you. Paul Dempsey, Corporate Director. I just wanted to round the discussion a bit more. So Youth Voice is obviously a really important mechanism for gaining the voice of our children and young people, but there are several other mechanisms, and Jo's already mentioned one in relation to the schools. All children in care, their care plans are reviewed regularly by our Quality Assurance Reviewing Officer, and it's a key responsibility of our Quality Assurance Reviewing Officers to see and communicate with the child and get the child's views in advance of the review. So, you know, the Youth Voice really important, but there's a whole range of methods of getting the child's engagement and their contribution and how they feed into that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item 15, corporate parenting strategy. We're receiving a report from Louise.
Yes.
Drury, thank you.
Good afternoon, Louise Drury, Head of Service, Children in Care. I'd like to recommend the Dorset Corporate Parenting Strategy 2024 to 2027 to the board for approval. The strategy aims to build on the successes of our previous Children in Care and Care Leavers strategy, which concluded 2023. You'll notice within this strategy, it is slightly different from the previous strategy. And I think that really reflects that we have used our children's voices to really inform the strategy through the Current Voice work that we've done, but also through the support of our Youth Voice team, in particular, making sure that all of our priorities are really centred around the priorities of young people outlined in the Dorset Promise. And also the strategy, I think, really reflects the diversity of our children in care and care experienced population as well. I'd like to draw your attention to the priorities which are listed in the strategy. So we have 5 priorities, starting with probably what I would say is the most important priority, which is around ensuring that our children are safe, but also that our children have a sense of stability and permanence within their lives. And also you can see that each priority really ties into the priorities in the Dorset Promise. So priority 1, safety and permanence, and then linking with the promise, supporting children and young people to be and feel safe, because that is what they said, and for all of us to be people they can trust. Priority 2, education and employment, supporting children and young people to have goals for the future and celebrating with them. Priority 3, physical and mental health and emotional well-being, supporting our children and young people's physical and mental health. Priority 4, identity, supporting children and young people to be themselves, to listen to them, include them and work with them. And then priority 5, those next steps towards adult life. We're avoiding the use of the word transition because that's not what our children use and that's not what they want us to be saying. So we talk about next steps. So supporting our young people to be safe and happy as adults. I invite the board to ask any questions or any points for discussion.
Councillor Claire Sutton.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, this reflects an awful lot of the issues throughout the other paper, so not much to say. I wanted to draw particular attention to one thing, and then a question. So at 2.5, something which it feels to me that maybe we're not celebrating enough is the investment that's taking place in our residential estate and the benefits that's yielding, obviously, you know, for children, for families. And I understand that we're not the only, you know, local authority in the country doing this, but people are looking at us in terms of how well we're doing it, in terms of outcomes, but also in terms of budgets going forward. The question I've got, I'm afraid I've lost track of the page number, so you'll just have to bear with me. In one of the other reports, it talks about young people in care being sort of expedited through CAMS, in the sense that there's a 24-hour helpline and referrals will be responded to within 8 weeks? I can't remember. Anyway, my question is, in this paper, there's something about the EHCP plans. And so my question is, and I know there's a bit of a backlog in the system on EHCP plans. So my question is the same thing. Are EHCP plans being expedited, or will they be expedited for children in care over other cohorts potentially?
Yeah, if you'd like to reply.
Hello, good afternoon. Kath Saunders, Head of North Locality and Strategic Lead for Special Educational Needs and Disabilities. Yes, we absolutely prioritise children in care and care leavers for supporting their EHCPs.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions? So are we approving as a vote with the board? Yeah. So so the recommendation is to approve the corporate parenting strategy 2024 to 2027. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, and thank you. Thank you. So item 16, the date of the next meeting. The next formal meeting will be on Thursday, the 28th of November, 2024. And the next informal meeting. 5th of July. Oh, it's at the informal meeting.
And with a theme of focus on friendships, befriending and mentoring.
Could you say that a bit louder?
Yes, yes, of course. So the next informal meeting is on the 25th of July, and the theme of that informal meeting is around friendships, befriending and mentoring.
Thank you. So following from that, then the next formal meeting will be Thursday, the 28th of November. Yeah. Item 17, urgent items. There are no urgent items to report. Item 18, exempt business. There is no scheduled exempt business to report. So thank you for everybody's contribution today. from the officers taking the time, the work that you've put into producing all of these reviews and consultations. Thank you. And thank you to the councillors for your support and your excellent questions and comments. So thank you, everybody. And I close the meeting at 16:50.